Over 80% of digital transformations fail, but digital transformations don't need to be rocket science. There's just three things you need to know to avoid failure in your digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And we typically will help clients through their digital transformations, beginning with digital strategy and software selection all the way through and including implementation. And oftentimes we get involved midstream, and oftentimes we get involved with troubled projects, and we'll help them get those projects back on track. And during those times of all these different engagements we do, we find that there's a lot of different reasons why projects fail. I could probably list right now 20 to 30 to 40 different symptoms or causes of failure. But if we really boil things down to three things, there are really three things that cause transformations to fail, or on the flip side, to succeed. And one way to think about this is raising the bar. How can we raise the bar on our digital transformation to increase the odds of success? And the reason I say raise the bar is because we can have and should have higher expectations for our digital transformations, but also BAR is an acronym that stands for the three things you need to know. And those three things that I'll talk about here in today's video are balance, alignment, and realism. Those are the three things you need to know to make your project successful. And if you don't do any one or more of these things, then it's highly likely that your project is going to fail no matter what you do throughout the rest of the project. And as we dive into this, think of this in the context of the things that you should be doing in your Phase Zero implementation planning. And if you'd like to learn more about what Phase Zero is and the types of activities you should be including in that phase of your pre-implementation project, check out this video right here. It's a video from my channel where I talk in more detail about what Phase Zero is, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about here as it relates to raising the bar and the BAR acronym is related to things that you would do during Phase Zero. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation. And you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. When digital transformations fail, it usually doesn't have a lot to do with some sort of breakdown in the technology. Now, it could be that there are breakdowns in the technology. It could be that there's issues with configuration or customization or testing or data. That could be part of the problem, but ultimately what we find is that's usually not the root cause of the problem. Usually technical issues are a symptom of a deeper issue surrounding balance, and that's the first letter in the acronym for BAR. So as we look at balance, the B within BAR, we need to think about how we can balance our digital strategy. How do we focus our efforts and our resources on things beyond just technology? Historically, organizations would spend 80, maybe 90% of their time, focus, and money on technology, and they wonder why their digital transformations fail. Instead, what they should be doing is spending less money on technology and more money on the non-technical aspects of their implementations. Things like organizational change management, program management, taking time up front to do that Phase Zero implementation plan. All those things are things that are likely to make your project succeed, and they're likely to address the root cause of why all these other symptoms happen around technical implementation issues. So think of this as a recipe. When you're developing your digital strategy, if you have too heavy of a dose of technology, it's going to taste bitter, it's not going to be edible, it's not going to be something you enjoy, and people are going to be left with a bad taste in their mouth, so to speak, throughout your organization. So that's why we really need to dial back the mix of focus on technology versus some of the other aspects of change management, program management, controls, process improvement, etc. And one general rule of thumb that doesn't apply to every organization, but I'd say it applies to most organizations, is that if you're spending more than 50% of your time, effort, and budget on technology, then something's wrong. You're probably not focused on the right things, and you're probably too focused on technology, which is just one part of the equation, and you don't want to neglect those other parts. So one of the biggest things you can do to ensure that you're successful is to ensure that you have balance in your overall digital strategy, to focus on non-technical aspects as much or more than you do on the technical aspects of the project. The next thing we need to do to raise the bar of our digital transformations is the A in the acronym BAR, which is alignment. How do we ensure that we are aligned from corporate objectives all the way down to end user adoption? And that's a big undertaking. There's a lot of different layers within that. It starts with ensuring that our digital strategy is aligned with our corporate strategy or our organizational strategy. We want to make sure that the digital strategy we pursue isn't misaligned with the objectives we're trying to accomplish as an organization. For example, if you're an organization that's looking to standardize business processes across all of your operations, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense for you to pursue a best-of-breed solution where you have multiple systems for different parts of the organization, because that's just going to enable a digital strategy that's different from your corporate strategy. So you want to make sure you've got that alignment between corporate strategy, digital strategy, and you also need to make sure your executive steering committee is aligned too. Make sure that they all understand what the digital strategy is and what the different components of the digital strategy are. And again, that's something you would address during phase 0 before you get into the implementation, because those are where a lot of the key decisions are made that are going to set the trajectory of your project for better or for worse. Once your executive steering committee is aligned with the overall digital strategy and the corporate strategy, you need to make sure that your project team is aligned, as well as the end users and the frontline employees within the organization. And those latter two areas, the project team and especially end user adoption, those are related more to change management as far as how we ensure that the organization is aligned and understands why we're going through the project the way we are. And the way you align your project team with your executive steering committee is making sure that there's a tight connection between the project team and the steering committee, and also make sure that the project team understands the goals and objectives and priorities that's been set by the executive steering committee. Too often organizations assume that this is just a technology upgrade and they delegate the project to the project core team without giving clear direction on priorities and expectations and measures of success for the project. So we need to make sure we're fully on board, on the same page across all levels of the organization, beginning with the overall corporate strategy all the way on down to the project team and frontline end user employees. The third and final aspect of raising the bar is the R in the acronym for BAR, which is realism. How do we create a realistic view of what this digital strategy is going to take to execute? And this is where a lot of organizations get stuck, and this is where a lot of failures begin. It's with having unrealistic expectations that a lot of companies make bad decisions later on. Just to give you a use case at a high level that typically happens, what happens more often than not is a software vendor comes in, gives you a proposal for what it's going to take to implement their technology. The management team draws a line in the sand and says, we're going to take that proposal at face value. We're going to take the vendor's proposed budget at face value, and that is going to be our plan for the project going forward. Now, this is a highly unrealistic view of what the overall digital transformation is really going to look like for a few different reasons. First is the software vendor typically will underestimate the overall implementation time and cost. Not because they're bad people or they're trying to deceive you, but because they don't understand what it's going to take to do more than just implement technology. Their goal and their job is to design and build technology. Your job is to transform your business, and those are two very different goals and objectives. So they're giving you just one part of the plan, and that's why typically they've underestimated the overall time and cost. The other reason why vendor proposals oftentimes lead to unrealistic expectations is because they're incomplete. It's only one work stream within an overall digital transformation. If you think of an overall program, typically you have the technology work stream, which is where your software vendors and your system integrators might get involved. You typically would have an organizational change work stream, a process improvement work stream. You typically would have a architecture and data integration work stream. And then you would typically have a program management layer that sits on top of the overall program. And so when you look at your proposal, you have to think of the context of you're just getting one piece of an overall program, and you've got to fill out the details of what the rest of the program is going to look like. Now, if you'd like to get some ideas on how to do this and how to differentiate between technical project management and overall program management, watch this video right here on my YouTube channel. I whiteboard and explain what program management is and how that's different from technical project management. That'll give you some ideas of how you might structure your team and your overall plan to reflect this level of realism that you need in your overall project. So this is why realism is so important. If you don't have a realistic plan, what ends up happening is you're forced into a bunch of bad decisions later in the project, because now you're trying to scale back and fit the project into a unrealistic project plan and budget, and it was never realistic to begin with. For example, a lot of times we see clients who will start to cut cycles of user acceptance testing, or they'll cut cycles of end user training. They'll cut back on change management because they think that they're going to save time and money by doing so, but actually what they're doing is increasing the time and cost of the overall project. And so you don't want to be in that position where you end up feeling like you have to make bad decisions or cut things that are going to be critical to your project. And so it's a lot easier to define a realistic budget and plan early on up front. So what does this mean as far as how we define our digital strategy? We've talked about raising the bar and how BAR stands for balance, alignment, and realism. But how do we do this? How do we ensure that we get our project team on the same page with recognizing the need to accomplish these three things? Well, probably the biggest thing you can do is invest in a phase zero implementation plan before you ever get started in your project. Ideally, you would do this even before you've evaluated and selected technology. But if you've already selected technologies, there's still a huge amount of value in doing this phase zero planning, because that's the point in which you dive into what the plan looks like. You dive into and validate and challenge the assumptions. You complete the project plan or the program plan to ensure you have all the different components within it. And you also make sure that your team is aligned. You make sure that the executives and the project team are aligned with the overall corporate strategy and vision. And it also gives you an avenue or a channel to create a change management strategy and plan that will ensure that the frontline end users will become and remain aligned with the overall project. So that's the biggest thing you could do, is focus on phase zero. And you can also download our phase zero checklist. It's a simple checklist you can get on our website that gives you some ideas of the things you should cover during phase zero. So check out the links below to learn more about phase zero and make sure that you're doing the things that you're required to be successful. So I hope this has provided you some guidance on how to raise the bar with your digital transformation. If you just remember three things about digital transformation in general and how to define a digital strategy, it's these three things. It's balance, alignment, and realism. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. To ensure that you're not one of those failure points. I don't know if I like that. Let me start the explanation over again.
Sure.
And they may seem overcomplicated. Nope, I don't like that either.